So here we're going to talk about interior fences, and we have a strong perimeter fence. It's high tensile wire, but that only goes around the edge. And in this case, this is a hay field, and it may be an area where I want to move my paddocks. Maybe I don't want a permanent fence line here. I want to mow it. I want to clip it sometimes. And so this is really nice to have a portable fencing. Again, it's electric, so this is an electric braid. So there's a stainless steel wire that goes through this, which conducts, actually there's a few of those stainless steel wires that conduct electricity. And around those are polywire, which is a plastic braid. And that when the animals touch this, it sends electricity and shocks them. And that works pretty well because that braid is really easy to work with. I can tie these in knots. I have an example here. So I can move these, I can tie them in knots, I can pull it, but it's not as strong, not nearly as strong as your perimeter high tensile fence. What it is, it's easy, it's light, it's easy to move with. It's being lighter than the perimeter fence. You don't need as strong of a post. So these flexible poly posts work really well just to keep it up. You can put some tension on it with them, but really they just keep it up. And the whole idea with these portable fences is that you're able to move your animals from paddock to paddock. So in this case, this area was grazed, well, this was grazed 6 days ago. Animals were moved after 2 days to a new paddock. After 2 days in that paddock, they were moved to the next paddock. And so I'm constantly moving them. And what this technology, it's really simple technology, what it's giving me the ability to do is manage my animals for grazing. So it's giving me the ability to graze this, get it to the level of grass height that I want, which is like 3 inches, and then move the animals so this can recover. So the way to think about this paddock, it's being grazed 4 times through the season, 2 days at a time. So animals are actually only on this piece of ground 8 days in the whole season, and those are 2-day periods. In between those 2-day periods, there's 30+ days of recovery for that grass to regrow. And so not only am I getting better grass through that process, but I am getting more grass through the core of the year. And so if I added up all the grass I grew on this, I'm gonna get more than if I just let the animals graze it continually all season. And the way to do that, especially with cattle, is portable polywire. It really works well. So this polywire, I just tie it. So I just tie just a regular old knot to the perimeter fence on the edge. And that knot just holds it. And then I may tie it ideally to another strong perimeter fence on the other side, or I might use a wooden post and an insulator, which I thought I brought one, but there it is. I may just use like a screw-in insulator, which would then go into the wooden post. I can tie a little loop knot in here. Okay, so I would have this insulator into a wooden post. I have my loop knot, I loop it through, and that's all I need to hold this fence. It works really well. And then when I want to move the animals, I just come down, I lift this up, I move the animals, I put it back. Works pretty well. If I want to energize it, I take my little tail and I'll just loop that around my perimeter fence to send electricity from that perimeter fence to the interior. Because that's sort of the way the electricity works, is it goes around the perimeter fence, and then when I want to connect my interior fence, I hook it that way. So really simple system, works well. At the end of the season, I'll go around and I'll pick up all of my interior temporary fence. That takes a little bit of time. I go around and I just unhook it from all the insulators one at a time. I'll flip one to one side of the post and I'll leave the bottom one on the other side. That way they don't get twisted around each other. This stuff can be a real mess if it starts getting twisted around itself. So when I undo it, I take one, I flip it to one side, take the other, I leave it on that side, and I go down my line, taking them all down, dropping them to the ground. Then when that's all set, I go and start on one line, and I just wrap it around my arm like that. The key with this is that at the end of it, when you're done wrapping it around your arm, you take your loose end and you tie it nicely around here and tie it nicely around the bottom. So you have a coil of fencing that's not going to come undone. And then the next year, or the next time you're going to use that coil, you're going to untie it from the bottom, untie it from the top, and then undo it in the same way that you reeled it up. One at a time. It doesn't take that long. A lot of folks will say, well, rotational grazing takes too long. But if I figure how much it takes me to feed animals hay, if I were feeding my livestock hay between, well, I graze from April to November, and sometimes into November. If I'm feeding hay, that's like at least in 40 minutes a day, every single day, or every other day, depending on how long that hay is going to last them. Whereas this, I could set up, this in this case, this is about 10-acre field. I could set up this whole field into 18 paddocks in less than a day once my perimeter fence is set. So my perimeter fence is always there. I want to come at the beginning of the season. I spend less than a day. I put in all of my 18 temporary paddocks for the season. And then all I have to do is move cows every other day. It saves a ton of time. It gives them better feed. It's better for the land. It's just, it's a win-win all around. So we really like this model for our cows. Some cows, you could just do one line. So I have two because my calves like to go, but if I had tall dairy, I'm raising Herefords, they're not that tall. If I had like Holsteins or Brown Swiss or some big dairy cow, I could just do one line because they're way up here and they really only need one at waist height. But for me, my calves, they're, beef cows are a little more stocky. So I do a lower line. Usually what I try to do is I try to have one at knee height and one at waist height. And that works well for my herd. The knee height is nice because my knee's always the same height and my waist is always the same height. So I don't need to get out there and measure, I just sort of go by that. The only problem I have with this type of fencing that I run into is when I put it into a new area where the deer haven't figured it out yet. And what happens is the deer don't know where it is and they can't always see it, and so they hit it and they pull it. With this type of fiberglass post with the plastic insulator, usually what happens when a deer pulls it is either this snaps or this insulator pulls off. It's not that hard to fix. I go around, I find the insulator, I put a new one on, I reset the post. It's rare that a deer will snap a fiberglass post, so I'll reset the post and then just hook it back up. With these PVC posts, they often will snap. So this is one that snapped from a deer, and so this will be set. They're nice because you can step them in. They're rather rigid, but what happens is if a deer hits that, it'll pull it and snap it. Or sometimes it'll just snap this off. So these are nice. I've used them. I've also doubled these up, like put two of them, sistered them right next to each other, and used them as an end for some of this temp fence when I had to. Just wrap it around. But recognize that if you're using these, there's a chance they could snap, especially when it gets cold out. They get more brittle then, or if they've been in the sun a long time. So these are nice, but and I definitely always like to have some on hand because of their rigidity. But I recognize that they're not as flexible. So these are often my go-to. One of the reasons I like these slide insulators is if my fence is hot, I can grab one of these and I can slide it down, and then I can just step over my fence. Another way that I get through my field with multiple paddocks is I'll just step on the fence and then I'll walk over it and I'll keep going. Normally I don't step on the fence next to a post because of what just happened, but if I step further out, that doesn't usually happen. So especially if you step in the middle of where posts are. So those are ways of getting through your fields without having to turn your fence off. But once livestock figure this out, electric fence is a memory fence. And you don't have to you don't always have to have your fence on even. I could leave my fence off for 3 or 4 days and my cows are still gonna be in it because they don't realize yet that it's off. Whereas my pigs test the fence every day. So if it's off, they might figure it out after a short period. But for cattle, their memory's pretty good and they don't want to get involved with the electric fence. So another post option here is this one with fixed insulators on it. And these are nice, they're step in. I like these a lot. The reason I don't use more of them is I can't adjust the heights of these insulators. So for any sort of undulation in the topography, these could be a little bit more tricky. But these are nice to use. And you can, with these fiberglass posts, you can get a lot of different insulator types. So for something like horses, you may not want a thin strand because horses like deer aren't going to see it well. And so you may want a ribbon, which is why these are flat like that, so you could put a wider ribbon in there for your temporary fences. Again, that ribbon will be electrified, but it'll be a bigger visual for that animal. All of these posts, with the insulators on this one and this post, they're all about the same price, about $2 a piece, and they last a long time. They're all going to be about $2 or $2.25 a piece, depending on where you get them and how you get them. So the price isn't very high. The rolls of this polywire is not all that high. If you're not good at wrapping it around your arm, which can be tricky and lead to a lot of frustration, you can buy reels for it, where when you're reeling it up, you just have like it's a reel that you just turn and essentially pull it in. It's kind of like a big fishing rod or fishing reel. Those work well. I get by with wrapping it around my elbow, but I also don't let other people do it, and I don't let other people pick up my fence because I know it would probably not go the way that I need it to go the next time I pull that fence out and go to use it. So those are the key with the temporary interior fence. I think it really is a game changer for grazing sustainably.